Um, just to add to something to Jenny's really helpful point there about stewardship, and money is something we find difficult to talk about, isn't it? As clergy in the Church of England, we feel embarrassed about asking our people for money. And yet it seems to me that giving is one of the really important spiritual disciplines of the Christian church. It unlocks that kind of greed and gluttony, which is one of the great deadly sins of the Christian life. And there's something giving that unlocks the heart. And therefore, encouraging people to give generously is not just fundraising for the church, it's actually good for us spiritually. And I think if we can shift that mindset on our own mind to think that's why we need to talk about it, not just because it pays the bills, but because actually it will unlock something in the heart of people, that giving generously is spiritually good for you. And so there's a whole number of reasons why we need to do that. And that may be one of the ways in which we can talk a bit more openly about that as well. I was visiting one of our parishes that shall remain nameless recently, and it was a parish that was always asking me every year, can we have a new curate? And I remember doing a little sort of, I looked at the figures of giving from that parish in relation to the average income in that neighbourhood, and recognise that actually in that parish the rate of giving was probably lower than almost anywhere else in the area, even though it was a very wealthy parish. I was going to say, well, actually, many other parishes of your potential wealth could actually pay for a curate. Now, obviously, not all parishes can do that, but that was a relatively wealthy parish. But the level of giving was relatively low, and it was a really interesting exercise to think about how that is. Now, obviously, there are some parishes that could never give enough to a curate. That's why the common fund system works. It's why we want to make sure we've got common fund curacies we can allocate. But it's getting that level of average giving up, not just to pay the bills, but because it's spiritually good for people. So thank you, Jenny, for making that really, really important point. We're coming to land in the last half an hour or so, and I'm going to hand over to Jonathan, who is going to talk to us about learning and development. So hand over to you.
Thank you. I think there's another slide. Moving on. Thank you all for keeping the energy up. 15 minutes from me, and then a 5 minutes summing up from Graham, bit of worship, and we're done. So if you can stay with it for 15 minutes, I would be grateful. And as we think about measuring and evaluation, monitoring data, I want to acknowledge two things right from the start. The first of those is none of us got ordained because we love spreadsheets. If you've ever found yourself looking at 104 columns on a single page, it's because there's a major crisis going on, not because you really wanted to do it. And the second thing I want to acknowledge is how counterintuitive it may feel to begin to even think about how do we measure what the Spirit of God is up to? How do we measure that? So much of our ministry, so much of what we do, so much of our lives is about stuff that we will never know the impact of in this life. I think one of the seductive aspects of doing a building project for clergy sometimes is you can stand back at the end of it and say, look what I've done. In virtually nothing else that we do can you do that. And we will not discover in this life the impact that a funeral visit has had, that a smile at a couple who are leaving our church and you know their marriage is on the rocks and you just gave them a smile to say, we're praying for you. We just don't know what the impact of those things will ever have. It was sobering for me to realize that it's now 25 years ago since I just started the discernment process as to whether or not I would become ordained and leave my previous career. And I got quite used to the idea of having to meet largely men, largely wearing black shirts, who wanted to talk to me about my life story. Tell me your life story was the sort of first or second thing they would say to me as I saw DDOs and ADDOs and examining chaplains one after the other. Finally a bishop, different shirt. But and the long version of my story always began with me in short trousers, 8 years old, sitting in school when the local curate came in to take an RE class. And I remember nothing about the class at all other than he told us that we should pray every night. And Ellis is smiling because I told this story to his PCC recently. And I don't know what it was about what he said or how he said it, but I went home that night, took off my shorts and put on my pajamas and knelt down by my bed and I mumbled a few prayers, probably quite selfish ones, and I think I remember something about the football results for that Saturday as well in the prayers. But then I did the same the next night, and then the next night. And a couple of months later, it was just what I did, as I brushed my teeth, said my prayers, went to bed. And that RE class has changed who I am. I wouldn't be here. I almost certainly wouldn't be if I hadn't sort of heard that from somewhere. Maybe God had another way of telling me if I hadn't heard it first time. But I wouldn't be here without that intervention. And there's a much longer version of that story, which ends up with me meeting that curate 30 years later in my parish and being able to say to him, "You changed my life." And it was the joy on his face. Because I don't know how many RE classes and assemblies between. We'll have taken thousands of assemblies between us, won't we? And I don't know, most of the assemblies I took, thank goodness I got through that alive. But maybe none of mine. But between us, something similar has happened. And we won't, in the main, I was very fortunate to be able to tell that man what had happened. But in the main, we'll discover that at some other time. So much of what we do is not measurable or even identifiable. However, I want to encourage us not to just shrug our shoulders and say it's all just sort of out there, and we'll wait until we can discover it in the kingdom. Many of you have invited me over to talk about mission action plans. And if you have, you'll know that as part of that process, we get to a point where we say, right, we've decided what we want to do. How will we know when we've got there? And the SMART acronym that many of you will be familiar with gives us a way of phrasing what it is we're prioritizing in a way that at least gives us a clue as to when we're getting close to that or if we're not. And I want to suggest that, going on to the next slide, that measuring, evaluation, data is transformed if we think about it in terms of paying attention. If we think about it as paying attention. There's a quote from Simone Weil on there, absolutely unmixed attention is prayer. When I first read that, I thought, well, that's a bit over the top. But actually, thinking about a spiritual director, really giving the person there working with attention, when does the listening differ from prayer in that scenario? If you had a really attentive funeral visit where you're sitting with a family, you will know when does the listening stop and the prayers start. It's hard to spot the join, isn't it? The pastoral conversations, attention is prayer. And I think we can see biblical precedents for just paying attention. The parable of Jesus in Matthew 13 of the wheat and the tares. The farmer didn't plant the seed, go away, come back and harvest. Somebody noticed. It's gone wrong. There's some tares in amongst the wheat, and we need to do something about it. It was about paying attention and seeing what is happening spiritually as well as practically in that parable. So my last slide, just thinking about why we measure. And let me say up front, I am as against measuring for its own sake as anybody in this room. It drives me potty to be asked to do something, gather information when I can't see the point in it. I was in a meeting with Bishop Pete recently when he said part of the directors of mission role is to be disruptive. And I will be as disruptive as you want me to be. If you're being asked to measure stuff and you can't see it for the life of you, why on earth someone wants to know this? I will fight on your behalf. Partly because I experienced that myself. My wife, Renata, in my previous parish and twice in Kensington area parishes, has been the sort of operations director, administrator, and so forth. And I know every spring when she's being asked to gather the parish returns, she's really going through it and thinking, no one else is taking this seriously, why should I? I can't see the point of some of these questions. But from an area point of view, as you'll have gathered, I hope, from today, we've put a lot of thought and effort, drawn on the thought and effort of the diocese in terms of trying to offer a framework and a structure and some invitations for you. We want to know if any of this is actually helpful. in rather simplistic terms, is it working? And if we simply shrug our shoulders and say, we'll come back in 2030 and hope things are a bit better by then, we'll have failed in our roles, I think. And certainly as importantly, if not more so, we also want data, measuring, evaluation to be a help to you in paying attention to what's going on in the parish. Not just simply giving some numbers and getting that off our to-do list, giving some numbers to the diocese. Another quote from Simone Weil, talking to someone who had been giving her attention, described paying attention as the rarest and purest form of generosity. And if we give that attention to our parish situations, our chaplaincy, BMO situations, it will be received as generosity. I was talking to an old colleague of mine back from my previous parish, talking about post-pandemic, what's going on. And he was saying that the people that haven't come back at all are the older Afro-Caribbean women. Now, he didn't have a quick and easy answer as to why or how to respond to that, but he'd paid enough attention to say it isn't the congregation's gone down by 15%, it had gone down in a very specific way. And there's enough attention being paid to be able to go and think about the response to that. And I said, well, my experience was that group really appreciated the cold call from the vicar. And you'd always be, no matter when you turned up, you'd be invited in. The wife would offer you a cup of tea, and if the husband around, he'd offer you something stronger. And they'd keep you there as long as they possibly could. It was a way of re-engaging. Other statistics have been about paying attention. 36% of children nationally have not come back. We need to know it's that significant, more than 1 in 3. We need to pay attention to these things. We need to know. So we're convinced we need to measure in some way. And we want to take as much of that off you as we can. We want you to be asking us for the things that would be helpful for you to pay attention to and be able to be resourced to do that. One of the things that I've found useful in the diocesan vision conversations is a distinction between what they call lead and lag measures. Literally now, my daughter is going into the last 5 minutes of her first biology A-level paper. Everyone's got a prayer to spare? Yes, please. The final 5 minutes of scribbling down everything she can think of. That is going on right now. The lag measure that my daughter Babette will get will arrive in August, and it will tell me and her, you've got the grades you need to go on to university, or you haven't. And of course, when you get the lag measure, it's far too late to do very much about it. It's going to, do we go back and retake them? What do we do? So more helpful are the lead measures. The lag measures, as far as the diocesan vision, as far as the area plan are concerned, are things like how many new worshipping communities have we opened over the decade of the plan period, what's happened to finances, etc., etc. The lead measures are the things that we've been trying to prioritize as the one ask under each of the headings. How many parishes have developed a rule of life by 2030? Because if the answer is it's 70, 80, 90%, we can expect a material difference to the way we do discipleship and the fruit of discipleship in this diocese. How many people have done the GROW course? Well, that will relate to the number of new worshipping communities that come out of it. How many people have audited the racial diversity and the priority they're giving to racial justice within their parish? That will affect how we're perceived and the practical responses of that. So a real encouragement to engage with something that probably doesn't come very naturally to many of us. We want to take that off you as much as we can. I was terrified by the first draft, being very honest. And again, Richard asked if some of this could be edited. My request is that this might be edited. The first draft of the diocesan plan of what they would ask every parish for shocked me awfully. I think the best hope of this is it doesn't depress people too much. And there was a lot on there. I think, why on earth are you asking this? We don't want to ask things for the sake of asking them. But what would be helpful for you to know that we're not currently asking? And some of that will have to be done at parish level because we can't sort of push right into the detail of the particular makeup of your individual congregations. But how can we help you prepare for that? I'm probably not going to do Q&A now unless anyone's got a burning issue they can shove their hand up. But my email address, most of you know that jonathan.rust@london.anglican.org. Do let me know what's helpful for you. Do let me know what's frustrating for you in terms of what you're already being asked. And we'll keep this conversation going about what information we need to gather and how we process it. We have already begun to find it actually quite helpful to re-look at just analysing the data we're already collecting in a slightly different way, and that's helping us prioritise things. So we're finding it helpful in the area office already, but we want to do a lot more with it and to do it rather better than we have been hitherto. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. We are nearly at the end of the day. We're going to pray together in a moment as we come to a close. But before we do, just a quick summing up, and if we can go on to the next slide, because I'm conscious that there's a lot of information that's come out today, and probably too much to note down. But what we will do from here is to send out a summary of today, giving you a sort of summary of the asks, the invitations, the suggestions, the kind of ideas that we've been sharing. And the idea for that is for you to then take that and discuss it within your PCCs. So if you like, you've had a sort of diocesan vision, we talk about the area plan today, but to begin to kind of embed this in your PCC, to take some of these ideas to your PCC and say, okay, what should we do? What can we do in these various areas? And that may take a little while, not just one PCC meeting. You may want to take it over a period of time, take one of these areas each PCC over the next few months and so on. There may be also discussions that need to go on in deaneries. And again, this is for area deans to take note of, but as well, because there are some areas where we have spoken about particularly deanery initiatives, so under youth provision, safeguarding, and so on, but good practice and good ideas at deanery level as well, if those discussions can happen too. So don't worry if you haven't got notes down, you'll get something on this in due course, and you'll be able to then hopefully work it through in your own parish over the next few months to kind of work out how this is going to embed in your parish, because it will look different in different places, because the parishes we serve are very different too.